The worst train accident in India in 20 years. For the past week, India and the world has been watching in dread scenes of destruction that have unfolded and the stories of terrible grief and trauma flowing out of Balasore in Odisha after that collision between three trains. A video apparently shot just seconds before the crash has illustrated the horror. Here's a look at what exactly occurred at 7 p.m. on June the 2nd, and also what has happened since in the investigation.
Three trains, more than 2,000 passengers, and within a matter of minutes, unimaginable destruction. The Coromandel Express hit a goods train standing on the loop line situated next to the main rail track. Coromandel Express's course is derailed and hit a super-fast express passing by on parallel track. At least 288 people have died so far, while around 1,100 were injured. While details of the circumstances leading up to the crash are yet to be officially revealed, some information has emerged. Authorities suspect that there was manual interference with the electronic interlocking safety system. Due process may have been flouted to give a green signal to Coromandel Express, which erroneously entered the loop line instead of the main line. However, a member of the Railway Inquiry Panel has reportedly disagreed with the finding that a signal error occurred. The investigation into the triple train crash has been handed to the CBI amid suspicion that it could be a case of sabotage. Meanwhile, the ordeal continues for families of those killed in the accident. Around 80 bodies remained unidentified by June 7th, with authorities trying everything from artificial intelligence to SIM card triangulation and DNA testing to make sure that the remains are handed over to the grieving relatives.
A horrible, horrible disaster, tremendous trauma and suffering. There can be no excuse. Those responsible have to be identified, and we have to make sure it never happens again. But let's also now try and turn our question to the bigger question that many have been asking. What is the overall status of railway safety in India? Many steps have been taken. Have they been successful? What still needs to be done? Now, let's just try and take a look at the big picture. In the last 10 years now, there have been 10 major train accidents in India, which killed approximately 600 people. Now, many would say that this needs to be put into perspective because around 3 lakh people die in road accidents every year in India, as per the WHO. In fact, in financial years 2020 and 21, the Indian Railways actually recorded 0 passenger deaths in train mishaps classified as consequential or serious. So that data does need to be kept in mind. It also has to be kept in mind that such accidents declined from 104 in 2016-17 to 22 in 2021. So it would be a fact that the Indian Railways have become safer. Of course, very difficult to be taking any solace from that and comfort in that in a week when we've just had one of the worst disasters ever, when we've seen those scenes of tremendous trauma and tremendous suffering. But so clearly, even now, the question has to be, whatever efforts have been made, how do we make sure that those can be improved? And how do we make sure that even a single incident like this can never happen again? What do we need to do? How do we find what happened? And how do we modernize the railway network further? So let's start by taking a look at the positive news. In the budget for the current year, the Railways has allocated a record amount of 2.4 lakh crore rupees for capital expenditure. That's a lot of money and a hike of 75% over last year. The electronic interlocking safety systems were installed in more than 2,800 stations by October last year. Every year, 4,500 kilometers of new tracks are being laid, 8,000 kilometers of tracks are being upgraded. All of this was stated by the Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnav in February. On the modernization front, 75 state-of-the-art Vande Bharat trains will be running by August, and the government plans to modernize more than 1,200 railway stations. Work has already begun on nearly 50. India is also getting a $245 million loan from the World Bank to modernize the freight rail infrastructure. However, amid all of this good work, it cannot be denied that there's also been major shortcomings, especially related to safety. And these have been highlighted by none other than the government's auditor, the CAG. Let's take a look at what the CAG found when it analyzed rail accidents between April 2017 and March 2021. It said train derailments were behind 69% of the 2017 serious and other accidents. It said 163 of the 217 serious train accidents were due to derailments. The condition of rail tracks was a major factor in derailment in as many as 1,129 cases between FY19 and FY20. It said that funds allotted for track renewal fell and even the allocated funds were not being fully used. Meanwhile, a Rashtriya Rail Sanraksha Kosh for critical safety work remained somewhat underfunded. There was approximately 15,000 crore rupees deficit in the funding for this. The CAG said there was a severe shortfall in the inspection of track conditions. The track monitoring system in a web application was non-operational. It also said that there was a shortage of the staff needed for track maintenance. So, all that debate has been running. Are we spending enough money on safety? Is there the right priority? Should we be thinking more of safety or thinking more of new trains? That entire debate has actually been happening. Now, in response to that CAG report, government sources had said that the auditor's report did not have data up to financial year 2022. The officials said that the railways had spent more than 1 lakh crore rupee on safety work under the Sanraksha Kosh between April 2017 and March 2022. It also said that 58,000 crore rupees was spent on track renewal during this period. So as I said, all of this debate and discussions and claims and counterclaims over the question of whether we are spending enough money and enough attention on safety systems, which of course is what is used by the Indian Railways to prevent mishaps. But the other big question, and that is really the question that we need to turn our attention on right now, the specific systems that are already in place. Are those okay? Are those state-of-the-art? Are those among the best in the world? And as perhaps turned out in this case, is there the possibility of human error when it comes to those systems? Human error caused by sabotage, human error caused by carelessness, human error caused perhaps by some boss saying, allow the trains to go, don't do enough testing, what are you doing? And a person there gives into that pressure, and the result is a fatal accident than this. That, of course, is the question that we need to turn our attention to. And let's start with the electronic interlocking system. This, of course, was apparently at the heart and at the root of what happened in Odisha. Now, the interlocking system manages red and green signals, of course, but critically, it also manages the track change points. It's because of this system and something that went wrong out here that that particular train, the Coromandel Express, was diverted to the loop line. In brief, the electronic interlocking system is supposed to prevent trains from running on the same track at the same time. And if it is doing something wrong, if by some mistake there is an error out there, it is supposed to be fail-safe. It is supposed to flash up a red light. It is not supposed to allow the trains to run at all. What happened in Odisha should not have happened. Why did it happen then? It appears, from the basis of preliminary inquiries, that the system could have been manually overridden. Manually overridden. Somebody overrode the system, and as a result of that, that Coromandel Express went into the wrong side, but the signals remained green. That's what happened. That's why 300 people died. That's why so many people were injured. Now, why did that happen? We're going to be discussing in some detail in a couple of minutes. We also need to look at some of the future systems that are coming. One of the most talked about systems that are now going to be launched in India is, of course, Kavach. Now, this indigenous technology uses RFID readers, which are state-of-the-art readers and technology that will essentially alert nearby trains within an 850 megahertz range. It is basically meant to prevent collisions with auto braking. It will also give alerts about signal jumping and overspeeding by train drivers. Now, this is being gradually rolled out. It will take time before the entire Indian railway system has this. It was clearly not installed on the Coromandel Express. And that's also why this happened. A third piece of technology that is now coming into the entire railway safety system is the anti-collision device, which essentially uses GPS to detect nearby trains and also prevents high-speed crashes by automatically applying brakes. Now, this, of course, has also only been installed on some trains of the Northeast Frontier Railway. So all of this technology is being rolled out. Some of it is in place, like the electronic interlocking system. Some is not yet in place, like Kavach Everywhere or some of those anti-collision systems. Now, obviously, the Odisha tragedy has put pressure on the government to act quickly. And that's also the question that we are going to now try to address. What can be done to make sure it doesn't happen again? Now, clearly, money does not seem to be a problem. India's got enough money. There's a lot of money also allocated in the budget. And yes, there may be a lack of manpower, lack of training in some places. And it's a very large train network, a very diverse train network. And that does make changes difficult to implement and to roll out very fast. To help shed light on this, to understand what could have possibly happened in Balasore and to see what can be done to make sure that something like this never happens again. Who better to speak to than Mr. Ravinder Gupta, the former Director General Safety of the Indian Railways, who retired just a year ago and therefore has a very clear idea about the present safety systems and what could have possibly gone wrong in this case. Mr. Gupta, thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Now, you were Director General of Railway Safety till just a short while back, so therefore you understand the system. This is a very emotional time for all of us. Everyone's trying to understand what could have possibly gone wrong. What is your understanding? Was there something wrong with the system? Was there something wrong, human error in how that system was used? What went wrong?
You see, what went wrong? To learn that exactly takes a deep, detailed inquiry. What appears very simplistic explanation, at the back end lies a very detailed sequence of events which make such a thing happen. In a very nutshell and summary, as everybody has heard, what went wrong is that a train was given through signal on one line. The other train was given through signal. Through signal means permission to pass through the station without stopping. So when that happens, a very basic requirement is that a train gets signals, and signaling is not traffic lights. It's not green, yellow, start, wait. It is a language, like a Morse code. So when a driver sees signals in a sequence, he understands what it means. So the message before the drivers, both of them, both the crews, was that the next station is clear, signals are through, next block section is clear. And for this train running at 1:30, he also knew the next station is also clear. So there was no doubt in his mind where he's going. He was going on a through line, and it was a perfect normal day of operation. Stations have signals, and number is quite large. These, like every other equipment, these do fail. In this also, see, this was my personal suspicion from the day one. The moment I learned about it and heard about the lay of the accident, I realized there's no doubt it's a collision. It's not a side collision. Number two, time slot will tell when and why the other train collided. So that also became clear that the train was also passing through. It was a simultaneous kind of same time slot operation. Why did the straight going train turn to a rope line? System remained blind to it. System did not know. So one small digression at this point. If the system is so designed, the automatic system, if it knows something is failing, it fails on a safe side. It stops train movement. It takes train to a less harmful line. So all that happens.
Mr. Gupta, if I could just understand what you've said so that all the viewers are very clear on this. Both the train drivers had got signals saying it was going to be clear for literally dozens of kilometers in front. The entire route is clear. The entire block is clear. Keep going.
Yes.
Okay. And the train was then told to go into the loop system where it crashed with the goods train, and the system for some reason did not reflect it. None of the signals, none of them reflected the fact that the train is actually going into the loop line instead of going straight. That essentially is what happened, and that's why so many people died.
So the question arises, why did the system not know? The core question was, why did the system not know? Every railway expert who heard about this accident would have thought that this has happened. And why did the system? This is the matter of investigation. So initial investigations, my knowledge is based on what I read in newspapers. It says that there was a repair going on. There was a manual repair by which, in course of which, there was a non-interlocking of the system. What happens is when you repair a system, you remove the interlocks and you remove the safety so that you can repair and test. Otherwise, system won't permit you to test. So in this case, I would understand very briefly that somebody repaired the system, did not carry out the mandatory procedure, and did not carry out the mandatory testing before restoring. In the rush of traffic, momentary decision, I can say that you appoint some security personnel to guard yourself, and one day, because of their urgency and stress, they shoot a normal person instead of shooting a enemy. So something like that happens in a system.
So essentially, someone would have been there repairing the system on the ground. This is an automatic system. It's now had manual intervention, and then they switch it back to automatic without actually testing to see if everything is okay. And that's where the error came in. That's where the tragedy originated from. That's essentially what you're summing up for us.
No, I do not know. If it is not switched back to automatic, if the system was kicked in, system would have realized the fault. System did not realize fault, means it was still blind. So therefore, it appears to me, detailed investigation may say, it does not rule out. I'm not saying that I'm ruling out sabotage or any willing action. There is a lot of inquiry going on. CBI is in the field. So they will find out why and how this person did it is one question. Why did he do it? Was it a benign action of trying to repair and not following procedure and getting caught in that chance? Or is it that there was a willful action? This is a matter of detailed investigation. I won't hazard a conjecture on this issue.
So, Mr. Gupta, let's assume it was not a deliberate accident or sabotage of some sort. Why then would it have happened? Could it be also that there's pressure on those linesmen, there's pressure on the people working on the ground, keep the tracks running, keep the rail running, a major expresses are coming, jaldi se repair karo and put the system back online. Is that what sometimes leads to accidents like this or tragedies like this?
See, Indian Railways is at 24/7. A lot of people say that our system is 24/7. That's all in paper and theory and sometimes in a server. But Indian Railways is at 24/7 on the physical ground. It never stops. It is not waiting and watching for someone. It is working, doing things which make things happen. So it's a working, actionable system. In such a system, there's very little margin for failures and then repairing. Because for every infrastructure is redundant, but it is not so redundant that you can have tolerate a failure without consequence. Consequence not in terms of accident, in terms of loss of performance, losing a train, waiting, making passengers wait. These keep on happening, and as we know on system, a lot of times when you are traveling by train, somebody tells you, "Oh, system is red, the signal is red, and it is waiting." You wait for some time, and then something happens, and you move on. So everybody curses the train got delayed by half an hour, whereas it should have been in time. But point is that in a 24/7 system, there will be some fault tolerance, there will be some failures which will occur, and there will be systems in place. It's a matter of training and discipline in the system that you tell people that you will follow procedures. Now, alongside, there is one very important aspect which comes to my mind, and is very personal opinion which I express. It is that ultimately in the system, we have to realize who's the expert. So there is a degree of respect which needs to flow in the system. Urgency, performance pressures are okay, but the man on the field has to have that confidence that if he has said no to it, he will not be overruled. And as a safety in charge, everywhere, all safety in charges, they insist, follow the rule, make the workmen follow the rule. And if workman is following the rule, you obey it.
That is a really, really important point that you're making, sir. And that actually is followed in other areas, in airlines and others. For example, if someone says do not fly, nobody ever flies. Now, I'm going to put you the bigger question, though. As somebody who's been Director General, Rail Safety, are we as a country investing all the money, taking all the steps that we need to do when it comes to railway safety? Is it a high enough priority? And are we putting enough effort into making sure that our trains are completely safe? Look, I know what many in the government are saying, no matter how good your systems are, there can be errors, there can be mistakes. But are we doing enough to make sure that safety is the #1 priority?
See, the Indian Railways is a very large system, 68,000 odd kilometers, another 3,000 kilometers of other gauges, variety of terrains, forests, hills, deserts, rivers, bridges. It's a very diverse and a very big system. There are bigger systems in terms of length, but diversity of terrain, diversity of users is phenomenal. In such a system, to keep similar standards all over is not a very easy task. So whenever you introduce an improvement, it is not switching on a bulb on and off. Railways have invested money in track. We have invested money on the bridges. We have invested money on the level crossings. We have invested money on interlocking. We have invested money on improving signaling, PI and EI all over the system, eliminating manual signaling. So system is progressing and we are far more advanced than large number of railway systems.
So the question that, Mr. Gupta, many in the public have been asking, given all of that, given the fact that there's an accident like this that shakes people's confidence, at the end of the day, what would you tell the people watching this? Is it safe to travel by the Indian Railways? Are enough steps being taken? You must have seen the reports also that in February somebody actually wrote a letter saying there are problems with the system, something like this could actually happen, you need to be very careful about this. All of those reports are also circulating. So what would you tell the public? Should they feel safe or no?
Yeah, traveling by trains, if you compare statistics, I won't give you figures, but I'll give you the impression of those figures. We are safer than almost all railways across the world if you check the accident statistics. We are. That means our ability to stop maintenance faults to convert into a safety event, we are pretty good. It's a very intensive system. High sides of this accident, apart from loss of life, is that the coaches withstood a kind of collision which they wouldn't have. If earlier design coaches were there, this accident is some absolute rare thing. In past, never in Indian Railways history, never, I can say without any doubt, a 128-kilometer traveling train has hit into a stationary obstacle.
Mr. Ravinder Gupta, former Director General Safety at the Indian Railways, thank you so much for joining us to really help us understand what could have possibly gone wrong. But let's just get another viewpoint on this terrible tragedy. Mr. Prempal Sharma is joining us, former Executive Director of the Indian Railway Board. Thank you so much for joining us. You've got some chance, sir, to analyze and understand all that has happened. What's your own sense of what went wrong in this case and what can be done to make sure it doesn't happen again?
I think it will be too early to speculate on that. But one conclusion I have reached, if you won't mind, the tragedy is very apparent. Those who are asking for resignation, that debate I will not into that because this kind of politics is a part of the democracy. Let them. Now, my suggestion or my impression is now we must review our all policies. And all policies, when I say I am retired railwayman, but I am part of this country. The system is collapsing, whether it's the institutions of education or any other, but I will focus only on the railways. So now what I'm saying, that review should be there of our policies, that now instead of going for the fast train, the rushing for the Vande Bharat, bullet is only one part of that. So until unless we are ready for that, and when we say we are ready for that, infrastructure means the railway track,
So if I could just interrupt you, I think what you're saying is obviously clear. I think nobody would disagree with that. Railway safety has to be the first priority and only then should anything else come. But we have been discussing railway safety for 60 years, 70 years. Now, what seems to have gone wrong in this case, human error, somebody overriding the system, whether by sabotage or whether deliberately. How do you guard against something like that? I mean, how do you make sure that that never happens?
कदम बहुत सारे उठाए गए हैं, मैं ये नहीं लेकिन मैं फिर भी कहूंगा कि और भी ज्यादा उठाने की जरूरत है। जब हम इलेक्ट्रॉनिक एज की तरफ जा रहे हैं, स्पीड 150 प्लस करना चाहते हैं, छोटे शहरों को जोड़ना चाहते हैं, तो पुराने सेफ्टी के जो मेजर्स थे 150 साल से ज्यादा भी रेलवे के सेफ्टी के बहुत सारे पैरामीटर्स बदले हैं। रेलवे उन दिनों की स्पीड अलग थी, आज की अलग है, फैसिलिटीज अलग है।
So at the end of the day, given that human intervention in some form or the other was the key in this, do you think the systems in present are designed in a manner that human error can be avoided? Do we need to move towards greater technology to make sure that neither is sabotage possible, nor is human overriding always possible? I guess at some point or the other, humans will have to be involved, right, in fixing the system if something goes wrong. But do we rely more on technology now? Should we rely more on technology and therefore reduce the possibility of human error?
Because ultimately, I feel the technology is very important, machine is very important, but somehow the man is also equally important. Somebody will have to rectify. So these are the questions, and what I feel with a full of tears in my eye, can now at least this minister or this railway, though I not have no the courage of defending that, but they must and they should do. Whole ministry priority should be focused on such kind of activity. Even if we have to cut our expenditure, our pension, our DA, our 5-star facilities, because that I'm part of that. The upper class of railway officers, they are always in search of the best facilities. They will change their room, their floor, their telephone, all facilities they will ask, but they will never care for the last man.
All right, sir. Mr. Prempal Sharma, thank you so much for joining us and shedding some light on this terrible tragedy. Let's turn our attention now to what the foreign media has been saying about India, and perhaps not surprisingly, there were lots and lots of references to that particular train crash out there in The Independent, for example, article about how distressed family members of the victims in the Odisha train crash are facing the requirement of DNA testing before being able to claim the bodies of their loved ones. The UK's Independent reported on the ongoing challenges being faced by some of those affected families. Time magazine interviewed many experts who pointed out that while the Indian government has spent a lot on the railways, a lot of focus has been there on speed and comfort through the introduction of new trains. They spoke to some experts who emphasized the need for greater efforts to enhance the safety of older trains that are still in operation. They all pointed out, of course, that India has one of the largest railway networks anywhere in the world. And so they highlighted the challenge of limited time for routine maintenance activities, as may have affected things in this case. The Financial Times spoke about all the investments that have gone into Indian railways. They said while the length of electrified railway lines in India has increased significantly since 2014, they said that some critics argue that the focus on infrastructure may not adequately address the safety concerns until there is improved capacity and qualifications among railway personnel responsible for safety. So they said that more focus has to go on there.